Welcome back to another MPA panel discussion. My name is Nelly Dos Reis, and today we'll be talking about impact production. Here on the couch, I have three incredible ladies, Bernadette, Ariadne, and Yula. Welcome, ladies. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to
Thank
be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Before we start talking about impact productions, I would like to know, I think me and also the viewers would like to know, who are you and what do you do? So I'm going to start with you, Bernadette. Could you tell me a little bit who you are and what you do?
Yep. I am Bernadette Kuiper, and I founded Impact Makers almost 8 years ago already, which is a small foundation in Amsterdam, and we focus on working with filmmakers to see how their stories can contribute to social change. So that's what I do.
Okay. Ariadne.
Yeah, I'm Ariadne Asimakopoulos, and I currently work as a teacher in at the Rijnwaard Academy for Cultural Heritage. It's one of the art schools in Amsterdam. And previously I worked as an impact producer for 2 projects mainly, which I will be talking about later, of course.
Yula.
Hi, I am an independent producer. I work in documentary mainly, and I work with different media. So I make radio, I work as a researcher on documentary film, and sometimes I advise on strategy for impact production.
Oh, and how did you get into impact production? Like, what was for you the reason this is why I'm going to do impact production? Why did you start doing it?
Well, you know, I'm really a generalist, so I've been working on all kinds of different projects all the time. And also as a producer, as a creator, I want to make impact with all my work, actually. It doesn't make, it doesn't have a point to make something which it doesn't have any impact.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I would be in the documentary film or visiting IDFA festival, and I would be in the cinema watching films and thinking, what am I doing with my life? Just, being here. I have to go save the dolphins and the children. And,
And the women.
You all have that.
So I don't know. Like it's a story we're probably going to talk about this later. But I just kind of rolled into it, doing projects.
Yeah. Well, it couldn't be a more beautiful reason for you to start doing something, especially when it comes from inside, right? And because Bernadette, you have Impact Makers.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us a little bit of what do you do at Impact Makers?
Yeah, I think I don't have a film background. I studied cultural anthropology, and then I did all kinds of work, and I started making my own sort of short film clips of people to sort of tell their story in my work, just to explain why we were doing what we were doing. And so then I learned the power of a story, and how much a story can sort of have an impact and then contribute to change. So that's what I wanted to do professionally. And then I started working for a documentary producer, and I learned that the way that we produce films in the Netherlands is not focused on impact. It's focused on production, because the production process is what you can finance, and then you can broadcast it or show it in a movie theater or whatever, and then you're done, and then you're on to the next project. And I thought it was a waste. I thought it was a waste of all the effort and love that's being put into making a film, and also public funding. Like most of our documentary films are publicly funded, and so if you use public funding to make a film, then you should make sure that the film contributes to as much as possible and as many people as possible. So I thought it was kind of old-fashioned to not think about impact at all. And then we met the people from Doc Society. It was BritDoc called at first, and they came up with the term impact producer and impact campaign. And so they said, yes, films can contribute to change, but not just like that, not on coincidence. You have to do work to make sure that films can sort of reach their potential for change.
And really have an impact.
and
Yeah.
make an impact. And that work is what we call is what an impact producer is responsible for.
Yeah.
And the sort of all the activities that you then set up is what we call an impact campaign.
Yeah.
So we thought that's great. We need to have that in the Netherlands as well, and that's why we set up Impact Makers. And
Okay.
we got funding to for 3 years to work with, like, per year we would select 5 projects
Yeah.
and then see how this impact production and this impact campaign would work in the Netherlands, where we
Yeah.
do have arts funding. So you can usually finance your films through funding, through funds.
Yeah.
And then how do you then develop and fund your impact campaign? That's sort of what we wanted to figure out. And we had 3 years to try it out. And so we did like 30 different impact campaigns around different
wow.
films, mainly documentary, but also theater, and then also more fiction productions, just to figure it out, to see how it works.
See what works with what and what
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah.
Because you just mentioned Doc Society.
Yeah.
Could you what is Doc Society?
Yeah,
Just-
Doc Society is a UK, US-based foundation, and like I said, they have this firm belief in the power of stories,
Yeah.
of documentaries, to contribute to social change.
Yeah.
And but to do that, you need to develop a strategy
Yeah.
and develop a network and get the funding and all of that, and to teach people the skills to set up an impact campaign. They have this big program, and they have this incredible resource. It's called the Impact Guide.
Yeah.
You can find it on impactguide.org. In all different languages as well, and it sort of teaches you how to set up an impact campaign, what it entails to be an impact producer.
Like with steps, like in steps, you can see it in steps. Okay.
Yeah, and it's a big resource. Like it's gonna
okay.
take you like several days to get through it.
But I mean,
But
if you're interested in
if you're
impact,
interested
then
in setting
it's
up an
definitely a
impact
website to
campaign as an
visit.
impact producer, then like everything that you would want to know and more is in that resource. And they still do that work, but they focus mainly on sort of the global south. And the work that they do is incredible.
And inspired you also.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because what is an impact campaign? And I'm looking at all 3 of you, but you just mentioned it. Ariadne, could you explain to us what is an impact campaign? Is it a too big question?
No, I can certainly not come up with a definition of what is an impact campaign.
But what is it for you?
Yeah,
What is
exactly.
it?
So,
Yeah.
I think first of all, it can have many activities and shapes, and it depends in length and in target group. I mean, it really depends on your film and your objectives, I think. So you can, for example, I worked on the first film I directed. The activities we employed were related to creating awareness amongst organizations working in the field of the reintegration of child soldiering, creating discussion, sparking discussion, dialogue, but also informing policymakers.
Yeah.
So it had a political component somehow to it. But with the East, the world of the East, it was also about education and entering schools, creating dialogue there. So yeah, I think it really depends on what you think is necessary and what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
And the question is, what is impact?
It's a big question.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
course, and
So,
it is-
yeah.
But before we continue,
Yeah.
because you mentioned the word of you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to add that, of course, now we're talking about it in the context of film.
Yeah.
But of course, impact campaign can be organized around any kind of content. Maybe it could be research from the university where they want to, be more connected to society, or it can be around a theater play, or
Like if you want to come up with some sort of definition, I think it would be that an impact campaign is the work that you do to see how your story, in whatever shape it has, can contribute to social change.
Yeah.
So there's a sort of, I think, a vital point is the connection that you actively make to your story and what's going on in the world around that theme of your story.
So, but and how do you measure that? So you have a story, and you create this whole entire impact campaign, and everything is going well. But how do you measure its success then? Because then, and that's also part of the impact campaign. How do you measure it? How do you?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
It's
Or maybe make it personal. How do you measure it for yourself? When do you feel like, oh yeah, this is the whole impact campaign. This is what it is, and this is what it has done.
Yeah. So I think to measure anything, you always need to start with to be very clear about what it is that you want to achieve. That's part one, which is already super difficult. But if you're super clear on what you want to achieve with who, if you can be clear on your goals and your target audience, then you can come up with a plan to evaluate that. And that always has two parts. Like there's one quantitative part, where you can say, I've reached this many people came to our after talk, this many people signed up to do whatever, this many articles appeared about my story, blah, blah, blah. And then you can also set these qualitative, you can also measure in a qualitative way. And so here you can you can answer questions like, what did people come out of? How did my story contribute to awareness around this theme? And so again, first set your goals and then come up with what questions would answer sort of whether you achieved those goals, and keep it really simple. Like just ask the people who saw your film or whatever, just ask them what they thought, and what they're going to do, and then ask them again maybe like a month later or whatever. But like evaluation, just like impact, evaluation, they're both like these huge terms that people can get quite nervous about. But I think key is to keep it very simple.
And should you compare projects? Because every project is different, has a different impact, you have different goals. Should you compare projects?
I think you just answered it yourself. No.
I wanted to hear it.
Well, maybe to get like best practices, right?
Yeah.
To learn from each other, to get ideas,
To get inspired.
to get inspired,
To learn from.
To learn
But
from,
Yeah, because so what do you mean should you compare?
Well,
in
I
what
can
sense?
imagine if you did an impact. Let's say you have a film and you do the impact, and then you have another one, and that one isn't doing so well. You compare it, because this one went better than this one.
Yeah.
But
Well,
is it?
I think like part of setting an impact strategy is knowing the theme that your film is going to be a part of. And like Doc Society in their tool, they have this sort of thing where you put your film in the right context. And so like the questions that you ask is, how many people know about this topic? And how much resistance is there towards this topic? And if people don't know and there's no resistance, then your potential for impact is huge. But if people think they know and there's resistance, your potential for impact is much smaller. But the impact that you make can be gigantic. Like we've worked on this this campaign around a film that's around incest, and which is of course a huge taboo topic. People don't talk about it. And so I think that we've organized, my colleague actually organized these get-togethers all throughout the country. There was like 10, and I think these get-togethers had like maybe 30 to 50 people. So it's not a whole lot of people. But the people that were there
The right people.
often talked about incest and what had happened to them for the very, very first time ever. And so to me, that is one of our most successful campaigns. And how many people they will reach? Not that many. But it made a huge impact on their lives, on their individual lives.
And this is so wow. This is why you do what you do, because then you have the impact, and also these 30 people will tell other 30 people.
Yeah, it sort of starts from there.
It starts from there.
Yeah.
So, but I think the three of you already answered the question, but I'm gonna ask it still. What does an impact producer do? I'm looking at Yula.
Well, in anything, like also working as a researcher, trying for documentary, trying to understand a topic and trying to convey something. First of all, you think about what is the core. What is it about? What do you want? What do you need to achieve? And then you think about how to get there. So That's, I guess, the easiest way for me to explain it. Then you think about what people, what organizations, what what kind of contacts, funding, what do you need to get somewhere? But it's all based around a core, around a story, like Bernadette said.
Yeah.
Usually.
Well, thank you. It's a clear answer. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, I think, so it depends on your production, of course, what exactly it is that you're doing. But for me, I think the impact producer also, in my experience at least, is in a way can be part of the center, or is the center of this production, because you work with so many people and stakeholders and all that, and you are the one who knows about all this in a way. So it's about strategizing, it's about funding, it's about partnerships, and somebody has to really push for this project, and that's, I think, is a really important aspect of your work as an impact producer, because all the other people are part of it, but they do one part. But you need someone to really,
definitely,
push
that's
for it.
very important.
Yeah.
That's
So
very, and often an impact producer is the filmmaker or works very closely with a filmmaker, because they're so motivated about the story that they really need to do this. Like, I could not be an impact producer for a story I don't really care about. Or maybe I should turn it around. I really have to care about something if I'm an impact producer. I think otherwise you cannot do this job, because you need to, really
It needs to be
get
important
people
for
on board
you.
all the time, and you need to really do the work and be the one to
keep
push
everybody
it.
involved.
Yeah, exactly. That's
And you're sort of the bridge between the film and the world around it. And also sort of the protector of the film. Because if you're the filmmaker, then that would be even more difficult. But if you're working closely with the filmmaker, then the filmmaker is the one sort of involved in the story. They're building the story, and they need to guard they need to do their own work and in telling this story as well as they possibly can. And as an impact producer, you're going to get many partners involved, and all of them need to know that they're not involved in making the story. That's the responsibility of the filmmaker. And all of these parties can use this film, but they cannot influence the film and how the story is being told. And to have an impact producer sort of next to the filmmaker makes it easier, because then the filmmaker won't have to have that discussion. The impact producer can say, no, we're making the film, and you're going to get the film, and we're going to keep you informed on the process. But we make an independent film, and that's ours. And as soon as it's done, we want to work together and see, in what way would suit you best to use this film. Maybe you need short clips, or maybe you need a longer version, or whatever, and we can work towards that. But telling the story is our independent work. And if you have an impact producer, that makes it sometimes easier.
And are all films suitable for an impact campaign?
Well, I would be inclined to say yes, but it depends entirely on the motivation of the filmmaker. Do you want to? Do you think that your story is suited for impact? And if so, how?
Also, it's just a lot of work.
Because
you should really want it. You should need it. Basically, even more than that.
I was thinking when you were saying this. So for No Place for a Rebel, I co-directed it with Maartje Wegdam, and we were both also impact producers for the film, because it organically grew like that. Also because the film is about a young man who comes back from he lived in a rebel group for 16 years. He grew up there. He was abducted as a child. He grew up there, and he escaped when he was 26. So he comes back as an adult. He comes back into society, and the film is about the first 3 years of his life, finding his way again. And it was we made this film after I finished my research exactly about this topic. So I was really knowledgeable about it. Maartje is a filmmaker, and we were friends for a long time. And we said, let's try and make a film about it. And then because I was involved in this topic, also as a researcher, I knew what we could do with the film. I was really aware about, these are the issues at stake, and we should try to have an impact. And so we grew into it. But at the same time, it was really schizophrenic to be the impact producer and the director, because, you really have to. Also, you have to think differently as an impact producer sometimes. You have to protect the film and the story, but also it's difficult to think creatively and at the same time strategically. And you're sometimes we put in a lot of energy in finding partners, and then we had to discuss with these partners what to do. But at the same time, we wanted to make the film.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, and now I forgot what I wanted to
Well,
say.
every
What did you
filmmaker
say?
needs an impact producer to stand by, right? Like
And of course, like, how long do you want to be involved as a filmmaker as well? Because the impact campaign
take
it usually
very
starts
long.
after, and some filmmakers also. You asked, is every film suitable for an impact production? I think that's also a question to ask yourself. How long can I and do I want to be involved as a filmmaker? Yeah, because sustainably, because you don't want to just drop it, do your campaign, or it means something else if you do it like that. And I think that's also something to consider beforehand.
But before we continue, because you have a trailer. And then we're going to continue this conversation. So we're going to look at the trailer, and then we're going to continue this conversation. Because
Nakudano kong kaya chuli kan ngaru nakudano beneng dao pe miaro chawlo bene tijino mo tat nem an ben ko kwana no be pa beno pangeru waka benne ko ngarmo yo char me kono unu medu do gui medu wile beru paka ber me ka wuni timu mai kumi tian gena darbe me ko pe ka ke me chuni ma bene pe par pe daro chi ka ngato mo ben yan mana chirin be won
telling Opondo that he's no longer in the jungle. He should not climb up. He should stay down.
Ada ko kir down tek tu pan. Yin be la lo ma da kir du so. Yin cha wing le dia be ri di. Da bi me kir ski di ko. Awa ngi ya be na. Ma po le na ba wa. Ala ki ya ko ma ka.
Every time you see me sit with Opono, don't think I don't know what happened. He might have committed a lot of crimes. He might have killed so many people. And now he's back at home.
What's the building span? This roof.
Cái pò mò nó chọc nhiệt pò nó cái tung bạc em cảวันที่bor cái này nè rồi như này vì nó giàu bọc rồi như bà em có bà.
So this was the film you were talking about that you co-directed. You did the research, and then the impact. How could you tell us how that went? Like, how did you decided to do the research, co-director? I can understand that's doing research yourself as a co-director is a better way to. I mean, I always enjoyed do the research and then direct, and then you went into also the impact. How did that come? Because you already said that it was a little too much. And where did you decide not to give this part of the impact producing away to somebody else?
Well, it was not a conscious decision. I think. Yeah, so I also didn't decide to become the impact producer of the film. I mean, we grew into it, like I said, and I think also what's important is that because I knew so much about the context, I really researched the issue, and we built up our network there. We worked with a crew from this area, so we knew many people, organizations, we knew the issue very well, and we were invested in it. And it's really difficult also in terms of funding. You don't just call an impact producer and say, hey, do you want to join my project?
Yeah.
We have no money. I mean, we didn't even, we worked on this for 8 years. We never paid, had money to pay ourselves. We took holidays to go to Uganda and try to film. We didn't have money to rent equipment at first. I mean, it was really super basic. We did it ourselves. We had no production company. So there was not even
Zero
this
funding,
idea of, let's get an impact producer, to be honest. And it was our first feature film. It's not really easy to make a film yourself here if you don't know the structure and the network here in the Netherlands. So there were many challenges, and we just grew into it, and we started doing it. And also, I think for us, for me, it was really important to talk to local organizations all the time. Like, what is it you need? What do you think is needed in terms of awareness? Or do you want to push for political change? I don't know, but it's not up to me to decide and to think what should be done. So it was really collaboration, and we were the ones working there and not other people. So we were the ones talking to our protagonist of Fono and all his friends and colleagues who returned from the bush and all the people in this community. So we knew what was going on. It's not,
Just for me to understand, so the impact campaign was staged in Uganda?
Partly, but also here in the Netherlands, because in the film there's a context of a court case against Dominic Ongwen. Actually, last week at the Movies That Matter Festival, a film came out about this issue. So it's a court case against a colleague of Ofono, who's also former child soldier and commander, and he was put to trial at the ICC in The Hague. So we had this context, which was also influencing the life of our main character and all his the communities there. And we really posed questions like, whose justice is this? What is the best way to achieve justice for whom? Who decides? What happens when in The Hague, somewhere far away from all these people, this trial is happening? How does it influence them in terms of security also? So we also targeted people working at the ICC, so we did screenings there, but also in the communities, so we showed it at least to some people, but not too much, because the Fono said, I don't want you to screen the film. So we screened it for some NGOs working on the issue. We screened it in New York at the UN. So it was really targeted, like you said. We didn't reach thousands of people with the film, but I think we reached some of the right people with the film. But it was very, dependent on
where,
who and.
But you said something interesting. You said it wasn't up to us to know how to make the impact or where to go. Could you explain that a little bit more? Because I'm assuming you really did you have a goal, like when you were starting the film, this is what I wanted to do? So that's two questions, but
I think, first of all, we wanted to make the film.
Yes.
Because we thought, first, just with the film, you can also have a lot of impact with a good film. And we said, this issue, it's relevant for this context, but it's relevant in many post-war context, where the line between victimhood and perpetratorhood, it's not very clear. We talk about it as if a person is a victim or a perpetrator, but it's usually, or often it's blurred. Justice, the ICC, I mean, we had ISIS, of course, IS at that point, where people were returning from, I mean, there were so many parallels to different contexts. We said, this is an issue we should make a film about. And hopefully the film will have its impact. And then, while making the film, we realized we can do more if we think about a strategy in a way. But it was not, what I meant is I don't think it was up to us to decide in a way, this is our objective by ourselves. I think you have to collaborate with the people who are or in the film or who are who work on this issue, who are so knowledgeable. It's their context, it's their life as well. Also in terms of safety, what can you do, what shouldn't you do, which pitfalls are there, but also what is needed. I mean, who am I to say this is what should be done? But I can play my part. I mean, I can contribute from my expertise as well, and for using the possibilities I have from here. And I mean, so it's a collaboration, but I don't think it's right to sit behind your laptop here and say this is
Easy.
what should be done.
But
So
you
that's
had
why.
your goals before talking to them, right? You had your own goals.
Yeah, but so we had
They
the
defined
goal
the
of making this film and showing it to, and we said from the beginning we can show this film, hopefully
Yeah.
at the ICC or for specific organizations, but along the way it also developed the goals because we understood, for example, I remember in the beginning I think we were thinking about how can we advocate for political change, maybe for I don't know in politics, or who should we target? And at some point we realized this is not our role to play as filmmakers. We are the ones who can make this film and put how can I say it, shed a light on this topic again and make sure the right people see it.
Yeah.
For example, in Uganda, we don't need to tell them what's going on in the communities, they know. But for them, it was really valuable to see in one person's life, to see all these issues connected and how it works together, the complex dynamics of his life. And they never really saw it like that because they all work on their own aspect of someone who wants to reintegrate. So that was something, but we understood along the way, so we adjusted. Yeah, it's not like you set your goals in the beginning and you never change them again. It really, I think you need to be flexible.
Yeah.
So
And
I
what
don't
was
know if you recognize this, but maybe it's different for different campaigns.
But what
I
was the
think
one thing that stood by you when the film was done? You were showing it, screening it. Is there one thing that really stood by you, which really gave you the feeling, well, this is what I do, or this is the impact is being created as I stand by it? Like this.
Oh, wow, that's an interesting question. In terms of impact or generally? Sorry, there's so many things.
So many things. No, I would say impact. Like when I mean, also as a filmmaker, you want to make an impact.
Yeah, of course.
That's the reason why you do what you do. But I can imagine, like after all of these years, and you finally show the film, and people get touched or people recognize themselves. There's something that does. And was just looking for a moment where you would say,
okay, I think of one moment now. For example, at the ICC. So we screened the film at the ICC. It was a lunch screening, let's say. So it was open to everyone who works at the ICC. But we targeted those people who were working on this trial against Dominic Ongwen because, they invest their time in putting him to trial. And it was so interesting to watch this film together with them and also discuss it with them, because for them, some of them can go to the field and see what's happening and experience it there and research it, but many of them are in this building in The Hague. They read about it, they hear about it, but they don't really experience and have no context. And while watching this film, they said, wow, so it's so much more complex than I ever thought about it. And they got new insights and it really touched them. And I think that is really, when you talk about the power of film, I think that's what we did well. And it wasn't our goal to say you should stop this trial or you should do this or this. It's up to them in the end,
of course,
to think about it. But
you did your part.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
Yula, you, if I'm correct, you won an Emmy for a documentary for Bellingcat. Is that?
Well, yes, the crew, the director, Paul, and us all, we won an Emmy for the best documentary. I think 2019 or 18.
Yeah, and what were some of the goals that you and the producer had with that documentary?
Ooh.
Am I making you go all the way back?
Well, yeah, I'm now kind of...
Flashback!
Well, maybe I could tell you... actually, I knew I knew Elliot Higgins. I knew the founder of Bellingcat. I went to meet him because I was actually working on a different project prior to the film. And I was interested in maybe cooperating with him. Also, I should tell maybe that I was born in Moscow, I was born in Russia, the Soviet Union at the time, and I often say, being from there, you have a very interesting relationship with the truth, because Growing up in the Soviet Union, you're told one thing at school, but you know that the reality is different, or people talk about different things.
You knew that then already? Do you learn that later, or did you know that already at school?
Well, first moment I understood was when I was with my father in the streets, and he met a friend. I think I was about like 7, and they told a political joke, and I laughed. For the first time, I understood, and then they looked at me like, "Oh, now she's one of us."
Yeah.
And they looked at me, and then my father said, "But don't tell this at school, right?" So that's how it worked. Coming back to Bellingcat, at the time I was following the conflict in the Ukraine. And of course, when this huge disaster with MH17 happened, it suddenly brought the war like to all of us in the Netherlands, right? Because there were so many, everybody knew someone,
on the
some
plane,
victim. And I was really following this conflict, and I started to notice that at the time I still had like online fights with Russian relatives or friends about what was happening. We all shared different truth, or what we read in the news. And then I found out about Bellingcat, who are open source online investigators, and it really intrigued me because they were the first ones to investigate the issue with MH17. I was working in a different place at the time, and I approached Elliot and went to meet him and got to know him. He was very cautious, of course, because, you know, Russian woman, or I don't know. At the time, it was Russia against Bellingcat, basically, who were just bloggers. So, and then a friend and a colleague, the director of the film, Hans Pol, heard that I knew them, that I was in touch with them. So he said, "This is like it's like an adventure book, you know. I really want to make a film about them. I don't understand what they're doing. They're sitting there in attics and like researching, but." So we started the research. And that's how it all started. Then we started to understand the way they work, and we went to see them, and suddenly it was like following, you know, a band on tour, and suddenly they're becoming world famous, and that's what happened while we were filming them.
Should we go to the trailer and then you continue this story?
Doesn't speak a word of Arabic, and he conducts his profound research from the comfort of his armchair in his home.
I'd like to talk about a very new way of investigating.
The way citizen journalism investigations are trusted is different than professional journalism. Don't believe me? Here's the evidence.
So there we see the bigger impacts here, and then there's one further.
This is James Rack for you.
They've made sure they've got wind blowing in.
Like a time machine, we can go back to the day of the MH17 shoot down on Google Earth.
The fake media tried to stop us, but I'm president and they're not.
Right now, they're winning. So we need people fighting against that.
Wow. Yeah. No, because you were telling that so at one point you were following them on tour, but one of my questions is also, so when do you, at what stage of the creative process do you involve an impact partner?
Well, it all went really organically in a way. We were lucky that, you know, the producer, Submarine, they were on board. We got some funding for research first, to write like the plan and travel a bit and film a bit for the research. And then through Submarine, we came in contact with Doc Society, and they selected the project as part of Good Pitch. And that's like, yeah, it was really, really cool. It's like an incubator of 3 days where you get workshops about impact production. And you're there as a film team. I was there instead of the director, together with a producer from Submarine. We stayed there. Usually it's like a filmmaker. And you know, you get to meet all these other filmmakers from around the world working on very important and cool projects. And then they support you in, they also supported with production, but also with ideas for the campaign. But the most important thing is that they give you the opportunity to pitch the projects to very like important and powerful people who can help our organizations, NGOs, whatever is needed. And they have a team who invites the parties, and they help you prepare the pitch. So that's basically how I became an impact producer for this film. We had, I should say maybe to tell, I don't know if I should tell about the campaign, but we had different paths in this campaign. One of them was pitching at Good Pitch. At that point, I was there together with Michel Reyac, who was head of Submarine Channel, which is part of Submarine. And with Submarine Channel, we were trying to produce a kind of standalone online piece next to the film. Then I was also pitching to basically get support for Bellingcat as a team as well, because they were growing as an organization. And that was important. So it wasn't that much for the film as for them as an organization. And we got a lot of funding from there. And then we also had the distribution of the film and things organized around that. So basically we had kind of three ways to create impact around the film, but also around the work of Bellingcat.
And you as Bernadette at Impact Makers, how do you, when is the ideal moment for you to get involved, creative?
Well, for us, it's very important that the story itself is clear.
Okay.
So what is the story that you want to tell? Because if you're going to think about impact before that is really clear, it's going to get really messy. So for us, that's really important. But I think that also was sort of important to keep in mind, especially for this audience, because that's mainly new producers, right, with their first projects,
or just emerging producers.
Producers. And I think that the Bellingcat project was directed by Hans Pol, who was already a very well-established filmmaker. So that made it much easier to get funding and to get started with that, because the way that you were describing how your impact production came to life is much more common. You know, is that you, as a filmmaker, there are no resources, and so it's very difficult to get somebody else involved as an impact producer. Like here in the Netherlands, if you go for funding at the Film Fund or at the NPO Fund, you can also, in your development funding, you can also put an impact producer on the budget. So that's good to know that you can apply for the first funding to develop an impact campaign, but that's usually somewhere around 5,000 to 10,000 euros. And to develop an impact campaign, that's not a whole lot. It's a good start. But like more commonly, like filmmakers do much of the work themselves, and they get it funded through crowdsourcing or through working together with an NGO that might have a budget for it. But yeah, it's like the reason that impact production is not sort of established as a separate profession is because it's simply not yet very sustainable. That's just the reality of it. But people come to us, like usually production companies come to us and they say we have this film around this topic and we think that it should do more in the world, and then they usually have a budget from the Film Fund or the NPO Fund, a few thousand euros for us to develop a strategy.
And is there a strategy, now that you're talking about strategy, is there, let's say you're a new filmmaker, you just create, in your case, but you want to create an impact, you want an impact producer. What is the best way, what is the best way to go to? Like, how do you get the funding?
Well, I think the best way, like, get involved with impact production if you truly, truly care and know a ton about this topic, like when it's your own, and when you have the authority to sort of go all the way with this story, that it is your story. It doesn't have to be about you literally, but that you sort of own the story in a way, right? That you are an authority. So you know everybody and you know everything around a certain topic, and then you usually, then you might be able to see that there are organizations, NGOs or funds or whatever that care about this topic as you do, and so you can then pitch to them, this is the film that I'm making and these are the activities that I want to develop around this film. I need funding for that. And so because if you want to get somebody else involved, you do need some funding. Like, it would be ideal if you like had a friend who cares as deeply as you do and who owns the story like you do, to get them involved. Then maybe they want to do it for less. But like, if you don't get anything for it, it's just completely unsustainable. And then something else will come along that will make you any money, and this person has to go do that. So try to get some funding. And in the Netherlands, there are many opportunities for doing so beyond sort of the arts foundations. So look into the topic that you're making the film about.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, look into the topic, not so much the arts funding.
So if your topic is, let's say, war, look or
there's the V Fund in the Netherlands. They're super
refugees
rich. Refugees also
super rich.
Well, the V Fund is very rich, and so
and also look into the topic definitely, but maybe see what the other organizations like in the field of the topic are already doing. Because as a filmmaker or impact producer, you don't have to make new discoveries and like do that work which others already might be doing. So connect to others.
That's why I said it's so important to own the story, because you should know that. You should know who's doing the work like full time, because filmmakers sort of visit topics and then they move on, and so know who does the work like all the time and who's dedicated full time to this topic, and work with them. Also look at other campaigns and see who funded them. That might get you ideas. But there are a ton of foundations, big and small, in the Netherlands. Where to find them? Look at other campaigns and see who funded them. And internationally, like Doc Society, the impact guide that I was talking about, also has like a huge list of international foundations that fund different topics.
But there's a difference between the national and international, of course, because it's international. But why, if it's hard to get funding nationally, why would you go international?
Because there are foundations who like work towards the emancipation of women or of LGBTQ groups, and they are international. Like they can be, and sometimes it's just whatever fits. Like here in the Netherlands, most of the funds that they fund work that is sort of nationally based, and if your project has the potential to be international, then you can look at the international funds as well. So you have to find a match, and to do that in the shortest amount of time possible, because everything already takes so much time. It's super important that you like own the story in a certain.
I think that's the most important message that I got from your story. Own the story. Really live it.
Have the authority to be the one to tell this story.
Also, if it is about film, then sometimes it can help to kind of keep it simple. It's a film, so think about screenings. Think about who should see the film, and then it's like a drop in the water. Maybe other people will then take on, or not maybe, you organize that, of course.
Yeah.
Take on the responsibility from then on, because as a filmmaker, you make a film.
Yeah.
That's your thing.
Yeah.
There's many others to get it from there.
Yeah. I think that's a really good one. With the development of and the emergence of impact as a word and as a thing that people need to be concerned with, I think filmmakers somehow got the idea that they have to do so much more, like beyond the film, like develop educational material and develop an app that does something and develop whatever. But that is already a huge new project that takes a lot of expertise, and maybe that's not the expertise that you have. The expertise that you do have is storytelling, which is great, which is already fantastic. So keep it small.
Yeah.
Talking about that, you also have a trailer, The Heat.
Yeah.
Well, I mean.
Yeah, I brought it because, let's just look at it, and then I'll.
We pakken hier leven als ze niks doen.
Hey, aan de kant, ze heeft ruimte nodig.
Oh, dokter Groothuis. Sorry, ik wist niet waar naartoe.
Nee, geen
zo warm. Zo warm.
Al enkele jaren breekt de zomer telkens nieuwe records. Heet, droog, tropisch. Ook deze zomer hebben we weer te maken met een hittegolf. Het KNMI voorspelt temperaturen tegen de 40 graden.
Hé, we hebben het heet.
Alweer? Dag Dolores. Ja, we komen iets vaker controleren in verband met het hitteplan.
Luister, ik begrijp dat jij je gewoon weer fit voelt om te kunnen werken, maar ik kan het gewoon nog niet alleen.
Stroom ligt er overal uit. Kijk, bij de groenteboer ook geen licht.
Kijk nou! Wat doe je hier? Ik kan niet betalen. Ik heb gewoon...
We komen er wel voor terug. We moeten nu gaan.
Anouk, ik weet niet waar ik ben. Kun je me komen ophalen?
Het water kan toch niet op zijn?
Hier wordt al weken voor gewaarschuwd, Wes. Lees je geen kranten?
Ik ben zo terug. We moeten water hebben.
Is dat brand?
Ik denk het. Ik weet het niet. Kom, we moeten hier weg. Hé, ik heb die batterij nodig.
Hallo?
Deze wijk wordt geëvacueerd. We brengen jullie naar een veilige plek.
The real disaster is doing nothing.
Yeah, this is a film it's a web series by Martijn Winkler and his production company Vertov. And here we went about it in a little bit in a different way, because at Impact Makers we work on campaigns within certain topics that are urgent to us. And one of them was climate change, and we felt like the stories that were coming to us about climate change were always the same, like documentaries, disasters going to happen, we're all going to die at the end. And and we wanted different stories.
What?
So haven't you heard? This is what's going to happen. So we wanted different stories, and so we started with the impact campaign.
Yeah.
We said we're going to set up an impact campaign, and the goal of the campaign is going to be to ask storytellers to tell us more stories, different stories about climate change, to get many more people involved in a very different way. And so Heat was one of them. It's a web series about what happens in a city when an extreme heat wave occurs. And it's also a love story. So it's sort of geared towards a younger audience. And so we created the campaign and asked storytellers to come up with stories that we can all sort of put in to make space for it within the campaign. So this is a longer running campaign, like the heat wave or warming up. That's what it's called. We are warming up. Started in 2019, perfect, right before Corona. And it's still going. And every year we have a festival, and so it's an ongoing invitation to talk to filmmakers, but in all different kinds of storytellers.
General, right? When I read about it, I also thought this is a perfect example of working the other way around.
Yeah, that is working the other way around.
So really, you want to make an impact, and then what tools can you use to make that impact? And this is one of the tools.
Yeah, and we believe in storytelling as the perfect way to create social change.
Yes.
And so, it was sort of a wider call to bring new stories to the table, and it's been really cool because it also changed our perspective on impact, actually. Because
was it the first project that you did the other way around?
Yeah, it was the first campaign, and because, like I said, first we were like, okay, so stories, an impact campaign, lots of activities, lots of new projects around your film, and now we're sort of more focused on, like, we all make an impact, and it's not necessarily good. It can be good or bad. So being aware of the fact that you are making an impact, that you're making decisions. When you're a storyteller, you make decisions about who's going to be in your team. You make decisions about how you're going to distribute the film, where are you going to distribute it. You make stories about sustainability. And so that already has an impact. Yeah. So to be aware of that and to make a conscious decision about your position as a filmmaker is already makes a huge impact. And maybe start there first. Yeah. It's changed how we work, actually.
And I think it's a very perfect example, especially for people that are watching and thinking, oh, I want to make an impact, but now I have to wait till a filmmaker makes a film so I can make the impact. It's good to know that working the other way around is also an option.
Yep.
And talking about impact, we spoke about impact, of how it impacts in a positive way, and in how it impacts in what we hope to get. But we also have impact that works the other way around. For example, you have an impact that had a backlash, right? A film that had when you were doing the impact, and it had, instead of creating the impact that I think you envisioned, it had a backlash. How do you work around that?
It's the impact that we envisioned, but I think it's interesting to see what do you do when it happens?
Oh, so you envisioned this outcome.
Of course, we knew, because exactly what Bernadette is saying, when you make a film about, in this case, the Oost, the East, about a very sensitive topic, colonial history, Dutch colonial history, what happened in Indonesia, former colony. The film is about the independence war. It's a war that in the Netherlands we are not used to calling it a war. We are, I think, if we are taught about it in school, we call it the police actions. So it's how to say,
like special military operation,
special
right?
military operation. Exactly, it's not a war happening. It was a special military operation. Exactly this. In general, colonial history is a sensitive topic. So when you make a film about this and you plan impact activities around it, or even without impact, just making the film and showing it to a Dutch audience, it's going to explode.
Yes.
And it was also part of the objectives of the film to show this story on big screen as it's a film made for a bigger audience, not just this. I mean, there have been documentaries made about, Andere Tijden, the history. Some people know about it, exactly, but this was huge. So we knew there was going to be a backlash.
And how do you prepare for the impact that is actually a backlash, but it's an impact?
I don't know if backlash is the right word, but because
what happened?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe tell
what
happened.
No, sorry.
And can we see the thing?
Yeah, so
we want to go to the trailer first?
Well, I think it's I think it's important to address, because the trailer is, so that's the East, the film, and we worked on an impact production called The World of the East, and that is the trailer we're going to watch. And that's the impact production, let's say, that we created to provide context to the film, and together they are this bigger project. So that's we can see the trailer and then we understand.
See the trailer and then you'll explain everything.
What happened?
What happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
How to engage young people in a meaningful conversation about Dutch colonial history in Indonesia.
In 2021, The Oost was released by Moluccan director Jim Taihutu.
The first fiction film ever about a black page in our history. The Dutch colonial war in Indonesia from 1945 until 1949. A history that is unknown to many, unspoken of, concealed even, but that determined the lives of over 2 million people living in the Netherlands.
Ook heel veel mensen die erachter komen dat ze kennelijk een band hebben met dit land.
But we knew one film only was not enough.
So we created De Wereld van de Oost, a transmedia awareness campaign that provides context to the Oost from a multi-perspective approach. A deep dive into history through the eyes of 5 film characters. It consists of infographics, archival footage, personal stories and a social media campaign. De Wereld van de Oost contributed to breaking the silence. At times it felt like an uphill battle. The criticism from veterans and other stakeholders even brought us to court. But it resulted in the opposite. Meaningful dialogues with veterans and other affected communities, always leaving room for different perspective and experiences. The campaign inspired people to immerse themselves in their family's history, to ask questions they never asked, and engage in conversation. Extensive media attention resulted in a wide public debate and created huge public awareness.
De Oost.
De Oost?
De Oost. In de film De Oost.
De wereld van de Oost. De Oost.
De Oost.
De wereld van de Oost.
A dialogue that is continued in public through our meetups, where over 1,500 people already shared their stories. And in classrooms, where it was applauded and welcomed as a tool to talk about the complexities of our colonial past.
Vooral over de Tweede Wereldoorlog wist ik wel gewoon heel veel, maar ik heb niet zo vaak over dit gehoord.
About our collective history and our contemporary self-image.
Wat zijn we hier eigenlijk aan het doen? Is het wel goed? Wat is goed en wat is kwaad?
So, the dialogue continues.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's...
Now we know what happened. So the big question, what happened?
Yeah, okay, so of course, this makes more sense. So what you refer to is, so the film was supposed to be released, okay, there was Corona, so it was postponed and postponed and postponed. Yeah. And at some point it was going to be released in, May 2021. But the first date that was communicated was in September 2020, So it was in the year before. And somehow it wasn't communicated on every platform. So on the original release date, we were, in a way, we were surprised that it already happened. There were some people claiming to represent the communities who were related to this topic. They reached out to us through the media, and they were really, without having seen the film, based on a teaser of, I think it's 45 seconds even, they claimed the film was representing them as war criminals. They said there's a link made to the Nazi past. So they were really vocal about it, and they communicated all this through the media, and we had to think, okay, what to do now, because we, of course, said, wait until the film is released and then we can talk about it. We are creating this whole production, the World of the East, to actually, that's our objective, to start this, but to contribute to this conversation and talk about it. And please wait so we can have a constructive conversation about it. But what happened was they just went straight into it. And it's really difficult to talk about projects that are not released yet, or a film that's not released yet. And they made all these claims which were not true about a film that they hadn't seen yet. So this was the start of quite an intense situation. So what I meant before was, of course, we expected these people to respond like this in a way, because many people were waiting for the East to come out. This was the first big fiction film made like this about these events. It's really a painful history for many people. It's been traumatic. It's not being talked about. People don't feel recognized. I mean, it's obvious that it's a sensitive topic, and we knew we did our research, and we knew, of course, who's in the field, who we can work together with, who can be our allies, who will definitely will not be our allies, and what do we do? But we were surprised that it already happened 9 months before. And then we said, okay, so what do we do? Do you respond? Do you talk to them? How do you do it? Do you invite them for conversation behind closed doors, or do you respond in the media? We wanted to talk to some of them. Because we didn't want to respond also in a newspaper, because then you get this really, it's
not personal. It's not,
No, and
it can only escalate.
Yeah, exactly. So these were things we had to think about. In the end, we decided to respond, also to give an interview, also in a newspaper, in the Volkskrant, and try to control it, or at least to try to convey our own message and our goals, and what are we like? How do we want to go about? And explaining that these are not references to a Nazi. They were talking about the uniforms. The moustache is a Hitler moustache. These things we were trying to, how do you call it, debunk. Let's say these myths. And at the same time, we kept inviting them. Because there were only like 2 or 3 people claiming to represent all these veterans and all the Indo-European, I don't know if this is the English right word, but community and all the Moluccans. And this is also difficult because they are not representing all these people, and many people were waiting for the film, and they were not the vocal majority. They were exactly. There was this vocal minority speaking for a very silent majority. That's exactly. And you need to
always
think what to do.
Scream very loud.
So in the end, we engaged in discussions with these different organizations. With some, we said, okay, let's talk. And at some point, we said, okay, we are not going to agree, or and that's it. And we also, for example, I presented about the World of the East for a very large group of people from the Ministry of Defense, veterans, all that, trying to make them understand this is all about also showing your pain. It's really, we have a common goal here. We might not agree about how the film looks, what it looks like, but we have the World of the East, which is meant. I think we did really well, and so we when we released the film and the platform and the educational material, we got really a good response from teachers in class. They were saying, yes, we are really grateful for this film and also for this whole platform with archival footage and young people talking about their past, because like you saw in the video, it's really helpful for us.
Teaching tools, of
and
course.
So at some point you also need to accept the other people, we will never agree. They wanted to prevent even the film from being used. Being used in classroom because they said it's propaganda. Okay, and then that was it. And I think we focused on what was happening in terms of positive impact. And of course, this controversy also helped us reach out to a lot. Large audience.
Backlash, because I thought I really saw this backlash.
Yeah, that's why I said backlash is not the right word. I think.
Sorry for that. But
that's okay.
But I think it's good that you corrected me, because it's not backlash. It's exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
It's also people started talking about it, which make it better, which make it easier to also teach about it and then really have the conversation, because you were forced to have that conversation, even if it can be painful.
And I think this is also an interesting project in terms of for people who are watching this, because there's the film, and I was really, in this case, I was not part of the team who made the film. They talked about it, I think, in a previous episode of this show. They talked about the East, and I was really the impact producer for the World of the East, and we had different objectives in a way than the film sometimes. And it's really also good to think about how do you work together with the filmmaker or the team when you might not have, when they might not overlap completely these objectives. Because for us, I was looking for maybe a little bit more nuance or dialogue when this all happened. And for the film, it was really great to have this explosion.
Because everybody wanted to see the film.
And I mean, you have to think about it. So that was interesting. And but I think with the campaign, this was about multi-perspectivity, bringing new stories, looking at it from different angles to this history, discussing it. It was not about saying this is right and that is wrong, but really open space for discussion, and I think we did well. And we could speak to all the media and to all the stakeholders because we believed in the project, and we think we did it really well. And I think that's important in the end. You can take the responsibility because I think, going to a classroom. You were saying sometimes it said, so we make a film. Let's make educational material. But you really need to think, can you take up the responsibility? Is your film, what is your goal? What do you want these young people to learn from it? Or what are your objectives? And are you the right person to do it? Or should you
hire somebody to do it?
Or not do it at all because your film, I don't know, it's really, you have to think about it.
And speaking about this subject, maybe not exactly this. There's something that I wanted to talk to you guys about something that is also close to my heart, is talking about representation in the film. And my question for you as impact producers. So people often come to you with an idea, hey, I made this film and I want to have an impact. What do you do when you see a film or you hear the plan and there's a lack of representation in all kind of forms, diversity, everything? What do you do and how do you work with it? And how do you respond to a plan like that? I will look at Yula.
At me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think that the time we're living in, many people ask the question, who has the right to tell a certain story? And I think we should always be aware about the sensitivities and the background and history. We should always think about it. It should be something like as part of your ethics, ethical code. I think as a filmmaker, just like other ethical questions that you just internalize maybe at some point. We're not there yet, so we have to think about it. At the same time, for example, I'm working now with younger producers who are making podcast stories in a community in a certain part of Amsterdam, which might not be their own entirely. So there is kind of insecurity. There's a gray area for the creators. Should I go there? Should I? Am I not stealing a story? Is it my story? So my advice, like on a personal, individual level, is always, if you're genuinely interested, if you're genuinely open and interested, and you learn, you really want to learn, and you're trying to learn, then it should be okay. Maybe you'll make mistakes or not know everything, but then, go to people who do know, involve them, and ask. It's a process we're all in. We're not perfect, You should just be, but if you're genuinely open to know.
And what do you do when you're a new producer and you are, I can imagine, not being scared to open up or being scared to speak out? What do you do then? What would you advise somebody to do then?
A new producer?
New producer, yeah.
Yeah, because that's always the difficult part, right? There's the ethics and there's...
Because I can imagine you guys being professional. You've done this a couple of years already, so a lot of years.
Yeah, but
so
still,
it's easy for you to speak out.
Well, and not even because impact production is such a we're focused on impact campaigns, and it's a field that doesn't there's not a whole lot of money to be made. So it's always sort of like, what do you do, right? Especially I think as a new producer. And this is the discussion that my colleague and I have almost on a daily basis. Like, what do we do? Not only when there's a story that's where the representation is off, which is usually very easy for us because it was like what we were talking about. Impact production always is something about something that you care about deeply. Otherwise, you can't be a good impact producer. You need to care deeply. And so when I don't believe in the story, then we're not going to get involved. And I don't believe in a story that is made with the wrong representation, not because it's unethically incorrect, but also because we know that the end result will not be as good. Like if it's not on point, if it doesn't use the right language, it's not as powerful. So the potential for impact is just much less if the team isn't what it should be. So it's not just ethically the right decision, it's also sort of from the, what do you want to achieve point of view. It makes sense to take that very seriously. And then also you need to make some money at some point. And it's difficult. It's really difficult. Like right now we're working on a project where we're both sort of like, how motivated is this filmmaker to actually contribute to social change or to sort of have their name on a poster? And I'm totally fine with having your name on a poster, of course. We all need to make name, blah blah blah. You need to make a next project, but sort of. It's difficult because we also need to make some money, and so I don't have like a clear-cut answer to it. Like I think you need to talk about it. I think you need to talk about it with somebody that you trust, and that you and whose expertise you take seriously, and that knows these issues. Like I think. You need to feel it and you need to be open, and you also need to educate yourself, especially as white people. You need to educate yourself all the time about, and there's all these fantastic resources now, right? There's all these great books and films and series and all of that. So everybody can get educated on these issues.
There's no need to be uneducated.
There's no need to sort of be clueless around about these topics. If somebody's still clueless, then they obviously don't care.
They choose to be clueless.
They choose to be clueless. So get educated and then talk to people about what would you do, like what do you think?
As your question maybe was originally speaking about the younger, like maybe beginning producers.
Because I know that they always it can be hard as a beginning producer to speak up and say this is.
So this goes also from their point of view. Find mentorship, find people who are who understand you, and who already have experience and network to help you. I would say that's my solution for everything would be just go out and find people.
Find people that inspire you and that you can ask.
That you can trust.
You can trust, and you can ask those questions that really think alike. But that being said, since we're already running out of time, I also have audience questions, because we put them online and we asked people on Instagram, do you have questions for these incredible ladies? And we have 2 questions. And I'm just going to throw it in the group, and which one of you think, I should answer it? Just answer it. First question. What sets impact making apart from marketing, and why do people sometimes confuse the 2 concepts?
Ooh, great question.
Well, I have a very clear Doc Society inspired answer for that. Like marketing is about butts in seats, like as many people as you can reach. And impact is about the right butts in seats. So impact is about reaching the right people that can take your story to the next level.
But in the strategy and creative process, there might be not that much difference. In the sense that I don't know that much about marketing, but I imagine you would think on how to reach them. So
I think
that process might be similar.
And marketing is always part of an impact campaign, but impact isn't always part of marketing. Like I think impact is taking sort of the marketing one step further. Like who do you want to reach and why? And what do you want your audience to then do or realize or whatever? Could
you say that impact makes it specific? More specific.
Think about not just who do you want to reach, but why do you want to reach them? What do you want to happen when you reach them?
All right. Well, next question. I think a very, very, very important question. How can a freelancer producer, impact producer, also make a living?
When somebody knows, tell me. No, like I was saying, it's unfortunately, it's not a very sustainable profession. and we're working on it. Like we're trying to get more funders enthusiastic about funding impact, but just there's
maybe the way that you were working with your latest project, the other way around.
Do it the other way. Yeah, it's definitely more sustainable to get into a topic and stay with it for a while, because then you have this network of people that you know and that know you, and so that you are already a certain authority, and it's easier to get funding. That could
be the answer, because then you do the other way around.
But as it works, I know that filmmakers and also impact producers, like you're involved with a certain topic, and after a while, you're done. You're like, no more
climate
Indonesia
change
for me. No more
I'm
climate,
done.
whatever.
I'm just gonna go back.
I want to do something else.
Yeah,
that's kind of that's sort of the reality of it.
Yeah. But there's no ending in impact producing, like in impact, making an impact. Like you said before, it can go on for years.
Yeah.
So
and climate change is good.
Yeah.
Like climate change is gigantic, and everything sort of, all of these topics that it's not fixed, and all of these topics that
there's
that
always
we're
money
talking
in
about.
the climate change, you know.
Sorry?
There's always money in climate change.
Well, it's getting
we're
better.
actually trying to save the world.
But maybe it's not an answer to your question, but I think it's something that we didn't touch upon in this discussion is thinking when you strategize and think about your project, I think it's really important to think about sustainability also for the project. That when you say, okay, so I'm done because I'm working on a different project, or not necessarily because I'm done with the topic, but at some point the project for you as a filmmaker finishes, you start working on something else. You need to think about who's going to adopt your project. Is it necessary? And if you want it to happen, then you need to think, where can I, is there a partner, or is there an organization, or because you as a filmmaker, you're not the foundation working on climate change, or the foundation working on whatever. Yeah, you know. So
it's an exit strategy.
Yeah, it's also an exit strategy, and that also gives you space and time to work on a different project again, because in the end, that's in practice, I think that's what it's about, whether it's filmmaking or film with impact productions. You always have one project, and then the next one, you need to start it in order to be able to sustain yourself. You cannot finish and then think, so now what am I going to do?
I'm going to relax.
Exactly.
I'm going to Bali and be by myself.
And start function for a while.
Finding funding and pitching your ideas. So you need to work on different things, and I think that's also why it's important.
That's a strategy also.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that people never tell. The strategy part, like even as a filmmaker.
The exit strategy?
No, not the exit strategy, but I mean how to make it sustainable. So you're working on a project. As a filmmaker, as a producer, as an impact producer, I think that is the part nobody talks about, because we always talk about the projects, but then what happens? Can you how can I pay my rent? Literally, and I think so that I think that's a good part to add to it. Yeah. Well, ladies, it has come to an end.
Unfortunately.
I could talk for 2 more hours, but I don't think that's going to be helpful.
Nobody's going to steal.
Nobody's going to
watch.
Maybe in the background while they're cooking. So thank you very much for the input, and I hope the viewers have a lot of information to go. I think definitely. So I want to thank you, and also want to thank everybody that watched. I want to thank NPA, New Producers Academy, Playgrounds, and of course AMARTE Fund for funding, for the great support. So thank you everybody, and until the next time.